Alright, so we're going to take our models. All the steel gets covered in Nuln Oil, all the gold and browns and reds get covered in Earthshade. So you just load it up onto your brush off your wet palette, and you just go around the model and cover everything that needs to be covered in the right paint. So for example, the boots get covered in Earthshade, the steel chest plate here gets covered in Nuln Oil, the steel machete looking thing gets covered in Nuln Oil. This will kind of just give you your shadows. This next bit isn't exactly necessary, so I took some Drukhari Violet and I just went over all of my purples and pinks. I'm going to end up layering over all of that anyway, so. So far in the series, we've done our base coats, which establish the kind of foundational colors and sections that we're painting on. Then we wash those layers and base coats with different washes to get the shadows established and fill everything in. Then we're going to go back in with our original base coat and work those shadows back a tiny bit, but we're going to leave a little bit behind. Then we're coming in with some brighter colors to build up some highlights. So here you're going to see me working with a lighter brown to start out with, out of the two browns that I have there on my palette. So what I'm doing is I'm doing all of my edge highlighting first with the lighter brown, and I'll be able to come back in with that darker brown, which is kind of my mid-tone, to kind of clean up those edge highlights. So this is the part that's scary for a lot of you guys, it's flesh. So this is a demon, so I'm gonna base coat it with the Slanesh just to get that Drukhari Violet a little bit like leveled out so that it's not patchy. And then I'll start mixing in the tan flesh into this Drukhari Violet, or the Slanesh flesh that's on my palette now. And I'll start just working it up the same way as I did with the boots and the same way you do with everything else. Just because its skin doesn't, you know, it's the same as anything else. You paint it all the same. You just layer it up and build up your layers, and you try to get a nice smooth transition. Don't ruin your life trying to figure out light sources and this and that. For a nice effective skin tone, it's the same as painting a pair of boots. So I'm doing pretty much the same process with the skin tones. This whole process is pretty time consuming, but I think the results are worth it, and it's just a matter of practice. So here I'm going to bring my skin tones up even one more shade with the Palette Witch Flesh and mixing it in with my tan flesh from Monument Hobbies. And I'm just going to start getting this nice and pasty looking skin tone and blend all of my layers together as I go. And if I mess something up, I just go back in with tan flesh or with the Slanesh flesh and tidy everything up. You can really see the difference between just the washes and layers, and I'm going to do the rest of the models and the rest of the textures other than the metallics, which we'll cover next. So after some time spent painting these guys, you can start to really see how the layers build up and really make the whole model pop. Pretty much everything here is done except the metallics, which I'm going to kind of cover next. It's a little bit of a different technique, but it's pretty much the same exact thing. So same as before, let's assume that black line is a hard edge. So this would be our lead belcher. We wash it with our Nuln Oil and it pulls kind of towards that hard edge. And then we go in with our layer with Lead Belcher again, and we try to create sort of this texture where we leave behind some of the hard edge, or the pooling at the edges, and then maybe if the surface is a little bit too flat, we kind of try to make some different shapes to make it interesting. And just like that, you do the gold pretty much exactly the same way, except instead of Null Oil you would use Earthshade or Reikland Flesh or a different wash. I feel like it's a good idea to just experiment with different washes to see what kind of shadows you get on different surfaces. It never hurts. So let me just paint up all 10 of these guys and I'll show you the result, and we'll finish off with the base. Now we're ready to move on to the base. We're going to start by dry brushing some Xandri dust over the dirt texture that we painted on way long ago. Just take a little bit on your brush, wipe off most of it on a paper towel, and you'll see that I have very little paint left on the brush. We grab our model and we just start kind of working it in all over the place. Once we're ready to highlight this, we do the same thing with something like Ushabi Bone. That'll make our dirt a little brighter in some places. Lastly, you might have noticed we covered up our rock with this layer, so we're going to go back in with Standard Mechanicus Gray, touch up our rock. We don't even have to use the wet palette anymore for this because we're using such small amounts of paint and it doesn't really matter. And we're going to highlight this rock with Celesta Gray. And that's pretty much the basing done. If you want to add a grass tuft to bring it a little pep, all that's left to do is black out the rim and we're done. This is our final result of the cultists, the base, the layers, the everything. This is it. They're done. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. Like the video, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you in the next one.